Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Um, this is our day two of our presentations for our annual holiday events. My name is Julie Buckner, and I am a volunteer with Mickaboo, particularly on the Telegraph Hill Conure team, where take in birds from the flock whether they've been sick or injured, and we get them medical care and rehab. And over the past 8 years, I have taken in and adopted 5 birds from this flock. And by the way, we always need more foster homes and adoptive homes for these guys. So please contact us if you are interested in that. And I believe a link will be popping up in here for you to contact us directly. And this afternoon we have Mark Bittner joining us today. Mark is the human star of the 2003 film The Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill, directed and produced and edited by his wife Julie Irving. He's also the author of a book by the same name, where he counts his patient friendship development with the actual feral flock of parrots in Telegraph Hill. And he's joining us today for a discussion about the reflections on the book, the film, what he's been working on, and what he's got coming up in the future. Thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Sure. That's what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah, that's right. Why don't you also let everybody know if you missed, if you were not able to join yesterday, Judy joined us his wife Judy Irving joined us yesterday. So we've got a presentation for that. You should check that out. She went over the making of the film, including challenges and rewards of doing that. Her latest projects she's got coming up, as well as their very cute disabled flock members that they have taken in as well. So to let everyone know, we'll be taking questions. You can put them into the chat now. If we're discussing something you have a question for Mark about, go ahead and plug it into the chat. Or you can wait until the end, and we'll do questions then. If something relevant comes up during the conversation, I'll try to catch that in the chat. If I don't catch it, we'll catch it later. So what I want to start with is discuss the film and the book, Mark. As Judy mentioned yesterday, the film was from a later period in the overall story, rather than a video format of the book, which is the more storytelling and history of your relationship building with the birds. And so she mentioned that it took 4.5 years to make the film. How long did it take you to do the book, and what was the process and inspiration for that?
It took me 7 years to write the book, and I started it actually when I was still involved with the flock. And I could only go up to a certain point. I got the beginning down, and I did a lot of research during that time too. I had been doing odd jobs for years. I was a squatter in this place where I was feeding them. Well, first I was a caretaker of a house. That's where I first started feeding them. And then I moved to this lower unit, and I was a squatter there. And I just got sick of doing odd jobs. I wanted to do something that I thought used an ability that I had. So I decided to write an article about the parrots because it was something unusual that I was doing. And I discovered Bird Talk magazine. I said, well, maybe I can get an article published, and they accepted it. And I thought, oh, I can do this. And it gave me the idea to continue on to write a book. And I was still working on it through the experience and then afterward as well. It takes a long time to write a book to get it smooth, on the surface. Yes.
Julie, you're on mute. Don't know whether you knew that.
Okay,
There you go.
Perfect. It wouldn't let me unmute myself. Sorry. And was any of the writing of the book, how did it overlap the making of the film at all? Influence at all, or completely separate?
Well, we decided from the start that we would divvy it up, that she wouldn't cover certain things that I wanted for the book, and I gave her certain things that Actually, I don't think there's much that's in the book that isn't. There's not much in the film that isn't also covered in the book, but there were certain things I wanted her to stay away from, and she couldn't document them anyway because they had happened before. Like my favorite bird, Dogan, is not in the movie at all, not even mentioned. But that happened earlier in the experience, my experience with Dogan.
Cool. Yeah, I can see that's what I was interested in because I did read some catching up on that, and so it's like if things happened earlier, and obviously the bird's not around anymore, couldn't put that important story in the
Some
in
of Tupelo's story is, well, I mean, yeah, is dramatized using another bird, but um, essentially she just covered the last year of what was really happening
yeah,
with some reminiscing.
cool. Um, Somebody had a good question for Judy yesterday about what got left on the cutting room floor from the film, and some really interesting stuff there. So it made me think, what kind of stuff did you have to leave out of the book? Whether it's for you ran out of time, you ran out of space, um,
I
and this
had
is
to leave out a lot of stories. I kept a really extensive diary through the whole project. So there were all kinds of stories that just couldn't go in, but one chapter that I did work out and I had to cut because the publisher didn't think it was germane. But it was how the gardens that the whole experience took place came to be, and the people who had established that space. And I thought it was really interesting. They were poets and artists, and I thought of them as the wild poets of Telegraph Hill. And I wanted to tell that story, but they didn't want it. So I wasn't very experienced with publishing. I had no experience with publishing, and I could have fought for it, it turns out, but I didn't because I didn't know.
you only know what you know at the time.
Yeah, right.
So, something I think about. So, I don't write
I wish
novels
there had
or
been color photographs in the book too, but the publisher doesn't do color. So
yeah. So, I thought about that because I write technical writing, so I write documentation, not books. But you always think of things after the fact that you would have written in there based on things that happened after the fact.
there are
And
things I would change if
yeah.
I had to rewrite the book, but I'm happy with it essentially.
Okay. Was there anything subsequently, after you wrote the book and after the film came out and things, some of your interactions with people, was there anything that you thought of that, you know what, I should have covered this in the book, but I didn't really think about that.
No,
Um,
that didn't happen, but I did learn some stuff afterward that I'm dying to tell. In fact, I've just started working up this one story that I'm going to get out somehow. That's really fascinating to me about I always had this feeling the whole time that I was feeding the parrots that I was supposed to be doing it. And several years after I was done, I learned some remarkable stuff that I'm right working on now, getting that story out.
you're not going to give us a hint?
No, because it's impossible to describe. It's a set of coincidences that is so strange that if you put it in a book as fiction, no, I think people would think it was cheap, you know, too contrived.
Cool.
I'm telling this. I'm working on the story now.
Okay. Cool. So reminder everybody, if anybody joined late, you can ask questions in the chat, or you can wait till the end and also put them in the chat if you want to. Um, let's see, what was my next one? Um, so as a human face of both of these, the book and the film, you've probably done more interviews and had more interactions and discussions with public and the media than you can even count. Um,
Yeah.
so you've had lots of questions or lots of things that people have said to you over time. So you had to answer questions and educate people about the parrots and about, what they're about, what you're about, and that sort of stuff. Um, was there any well, I'm sure there were, but what types of misconceptions has the public or maybe media outlets have had about your experience, misconceptions they've had about the birds or you.
That's a difficult question to answer because I could have answered it maybe 10 years ago, but that's sort of all drifted away from my mind. One thing that's kind of strange for me here in San Francisco, I wrote that book because people didn't, one of the reasons I wrote it, people didn't understand what the flock was about, how it could exist, and in the cold weather, et cetera, et cetera. And I had answers to all these questions, but I still get the same questions asked all the time. And I often will say, well, read the book. And they'll say, no, just tell me. And it's like you write a book to try to lay out something, and people often don't want to read it just because it's too much work. That's the
Yeah.
one thing that's gotten to me sometimes, is just they want it free right away.
They want the information framed in the way that they want
Right,
to do it.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. And I tried to clear up a lot of myths about the flock, but they've never gone away. I mean, I get reporters, occasionally they'll do a story on me, an update on what I'm into now. And they still have the same questions about things that I addressed in the book, but they're wrong.
So there you have myths in the book. There's references all over the place, and I've been asked questions over the years, or people have said things to me that don't seem to make any sense. I'm not sure where they got the stories from. Are there any particularly egregious ones that are just completely fantastical about like origin stories and things
Well,
like where
people will
people
tell
come
me
from?
they know how that flock got started, and it's always something completely ridiculous. I never did find out. I was hoping at some point somebody would come along and say, okay, here's what really happened. But I don't think there was any one source. The flock was started by, oh yeah, okay, a lot of people say they're pet birds that got loose, but that's not the case. The flock was started entirely by wild-caught imports. And all the original birds I saw, except for their offspring, had those import bands on their legs. And there was one bird, one cherry head that showed, there was a previous flock of canary wings. And there was a cherry head flying with them at some point. And then more birds started showing up. So I think my own guess is that people were buying wild-caught birds from pet stores before that was made illegal, and finding out that wild birds are wild and a handful, so they were getting rid of them. And
Yeah.
I assume also why all cherry heads for the most part, because probably some local distributor had access. And also Connor, the blue crown, was very clearly once a pet. When I had him in the house, he knew all about houses and windows and all of that stuff. So he was a wild caught. He had that band, the quarantine band on his leg, but he'd been a pet for a while before he was released or got free or whatever.
Yeah. There was a one story about a truck full of parrots and
Yeah,
boxes. You've heard that one?
yeah. I know the guy who tells it. They got off a ship is a very common one, but they didn't, ship parrots on ships. It was always airplanes.
Okay.
Airports are a common source for flocks around the United States, where there was a mishap handling a box of parrots.
Mm.
I've heard that often enough, and I trust that story
Yeah,
generally.
I mean, all of them are about. I knew they had bands, so clearly, wild-caught birds. Um, and I just thought of this one, but introduction of mitered into the
Mhm.
to the mix. Do you think that happened about the same time the cherry had surfaced, or do you think later?
I know the date she showed up in the flock. I don't have it with me at the moment, but I remember the first time I saw her, I wrote it down. She was a wild caught also.
Okay. Because one of mine, white birds from the flock, if you go into Wikipedia and look up mitered conure, he looks exactly like that.
Well, there's a lot of hybridization in the flock because of her, and I am able to recognize the hybrid from a cherry head all the time. So they tend to take on some mitered characteristics, but they also will just be absolutely out of this world, looking like nothing in particular.
I've seen a lot of mixtures out there with some with like extreme amounts of red.
Yeah, yeah.
You've seen those
Those are
guys?
usually hybrids.
Yeah.
There are
They're
also some that it seems to be that the heavy reds are male, and some of the hybrids are almost totally green with only some red, and they tend to be female. From what I saw, that was my experience before I left.
cool. Let's see.
They also have
Um,
a different squawk.
I have one that doesn't squawk really, um, but only one. Um, and I know, so the flock started, as far as we know, that ended up in Telegraph Hill, where you were, um, and you had moved away from the area, and you're back in the area now, right?
I'm right next door to where I lived in the film.
Okay. So is it similar to the way it was then with the numbers of birds that come by and things like
Oh,
that?
well, I don't feed them anymore.
Right.
And I don't even see them very often because a lot of the century trees, the trees that they used to perch in to look for hawks, have been cut down.
Oh no.
So they don't come by as often. And the flock has gotten so large, actually, that it seldom flies in one group. There are a lot of smaller groups, and I think they have more than one roost spot at this point. They've been seen as far south as Brisbane. I saw them there
Oh wow.
once.
I'd heard that they were that far south. That was going to be the next thing I was going to ask you about, what you knew about the current range, because this is something I get asked about on a regular basis. That people have seen them or think they've seen them different areas of town. I'm down in the Glen Park area,
Yeah, they go there.
so down south, and they do come by here. Um, it's usually during the warmer months, not year round. Um, and so they came in and crashed a meeting of ravens a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
They basically drowned out the ravens, but those guys continued their conversation anyway. There was probably about 20 to 30 birds.
Hmm.
Seeing them all over town, usually around Lower Haight. Anytime I go to the Lower Haight, I see and hear them.
They're seen in the Richmond, not too much in the Sunset Visitation Valley, and they go as far south as Brisbane. But I don't. Beyond that, it's mostly industrial
hmm
and like South San Francisco, and they're just going where there's food. They're slowly learning where the food trees are.
Yeah. I suspect it's where, different times of year where the food is that they want, which is why I only see them certain parts of the year and
Yeah,
not in others.
I see that
Um,
their main roost spot is like a half a mile or a mile from here, so I
right, down
see
near the
them often.
Embarcadero.
I just don't see them in big numbers. They don't come here for one reason. I'm not feeding them, but there are other people who do feed them, and you'll see little squadrons come in.
Always little squadrons
Yeah,
everywhere. The other thing people ask about, which of course we don't really have a good way to do this, is getting like good numbers because, well, they're always moving. Um,
yeah, yeah. Well, the Audubon Society has counted over 200
okay,
uh, on their Christmas bird counts
well, that's good.
frequently. I always estimated it at between 200 and 400,
Yeah,
and there
I
were
would
like,
guess probably about three to four.
yeah, there were
Um,
around 60 when I left in '99.
wow, they've branched out. What year range do you think that they appeared based on the bands that you saw come by?
'87 is when the first one showed up,
87. Okay.
and then somewhere in between 90 and 93, a lot more joined, 6 to 8,
Okay.
and then they were breeding, doing well. And when I first saw them, when I first started feeding them, I think they were around 24.
Okay. Wow. 1987.
That
Oh,
was '93 when they were around 24.
okay. So fairly slowly. I'm glancing. I see a question about whether anybody you've heard of them being around Lake Merced.
I don't get reports on that kind of thing. I used to, so I don't know. It's quite feasible.
Okay. It would make sense to me, Linda, that they would be over there. It wouldn't surprise me. Lots of trees,
Yeah.
stuff over there. Yeah. Um, let's see. And again, continue to submit your questions. Oh, I see another one. Let's see. Oh, somebody's asking about lifespan of these birds. Um, that probably differs greatly, probably within and within the flock and probably out within and outside the flock. What about with the flock? What do you think, Mark?
I didn't have enough years of experience to have a really strong opinion, but my hunch is that 5 years is pretty good for them. 12 is old. That's just been my sense.
Yeah, I
Like one
imagine
of the
because it's
birds,
hard.
one of the birds that I know when he died because of another person who was feeding them before me and kept a diary. He would have been around 10 or 12.
Okay. Hmm.
But I can't really say with any firm conviction.
Right. Yeah, I know they can vary a lot in captivity. I think somebody can correct me, like Sarah, 25 to 30 years
Yeah,
of, in optimal conditions probably.
yeah.
But I know that, out in the flock, it's like for any wild animals, it's a harsher existence. I think, it's not in their native environment. Um, so I think we've had some birds that we found that had, not great bone structure, not enough calcium and stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it depends on what they're eating, um, stuff like that. Um, let's see. Let's see if we have any more good questions. Um, let's see. Okay. Um, and actually, um, again, submit your questions. Um, but I wanted to get to some info about actually what you're doing now. Um, since it's been a while since that, you've been moving on to other things. You do music, you write other stuff. Um, so I hear that you've got a book you're working on with
Hmm.
some companion music to go with it, called Street Song,
Right.
that are in progress. What's going on with those? What's the story there?
Well, I've been working on the book for almost 16 years, and I'm on the final draft. It's final because I can't do it again. And I'm about 85% of the way
Okay.
through that last draft now. Um, it's some of the story that this book covers is in my first book, but it's really about the stream of events and ideas that led me to living on the street for 14 years. And I was a street singer at the time too, so that's part of why it's called Street Song. I often read books about musicians. I had quit playing music completely. I mean, I would pull out my guitar and strum a little bit, but my chops were not up at all. But I had this idea. When I read books about musicians, they'll often describe some performance that I have never heard, and it bugs me. And I'm talking about my own music in this book a lot. So I just said, well, I have a friend who has a studio. I should record a little bit just to make it available so that somebody can have some idea of what I sound like. But once I got into the studio, it got crazy. I just started developing. You have tracks, you can add, you can layer all this different stuff. And it got really out of hand in a way. But at first, I considered it supplemental, but it's become integral to the book. And I really I was dissatisfied with what I was hearing because I hadn't played in so long. So I've been working. I mean, it's very crazy. It just opened the door to music. I'm making my first album. Age 70, I'm making my first album. And I've been playing like 3, 4, 5 hours a day, trying to, get up to snuff. And I'm really happy with how it's going. I've been surprised.
The recording stuff, I understand, can get really complicated these days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's all kinds of stuff, tricks and stuff you can do, but we've been trying to keep it real.
So you're not quantizing everything and making everything exact?
Well, what usually happens, I play my guitar against a click track.
Okay.
and sing a guide vocal. Then say, okay, we'll add a bass and we'll add some drums. Okay, let's add a piano. But everything's tied into that click track
Okay.
and my original guitar. And then I'll do the last thing that happens is my voice, but we've got saxophones, all trumpets, all kinds of things on this album, you know, electric guitars, organs.
You playing all of those?
No, I'm just playing acoustic guitar most of the time. And often what will happen is the first track with my guitar is just really a guide, and the track will get crowded enough that we'll take my guitar out because there's all these other players doing stuff that covers that ground. So I'm not on there that much guitar wise, but some. I think you're going to play it a song. Is that correct? Or not?
I lost the audio for a second there. What was
You're going to
that?
do Papa John. Did I understand that correctly?
Oh, the
No, no. Okay. All right.
vision
Never
was
mind.
no.
Never mind. I didn't say anything. I misunderstood or misheard, or they changed it. It's
Okay.
fine. It's fine.
Cool. I had some other questions about that. So doing all the recording and stuff, I know that we were talking to Judy yesterday. She mentioned some of the challenges with filming her current project she's working on now, with COVID, and trying to do the filming with not filming people with masks so that she could
Yeah.
keep things timeless.
Yeah.
And that's something that we were talking about, earlier today before this event. It's like, how do we keep all of that stuff from later from traumatizing people? But I know that things like recording, and also not to mention concerts and things like that, have kind of gone. Couldn't really do any of that. That
Yeah,
had
the
that
studio
impact
got
on the
shut down
project.
for over a year,
Yeah.
which was fine because it gave me time to just work on my musicianship. There's no rush. The book's not done and the music's not coming out until the book is done. I mean, even after I finish this book, I figure around February. I
Okay.
still have to find a publisher. I don't have one yet.
That's the next
And it's
challenge.
a really weird book. So
So who's
I
gonna have somebody write the information on the jacket and summarize it for you
mhm.
in order to sell it.
But I'm almost done with the recordings too. That's real close. I only have 2 vocals left to do. All the musical instrument tracks are done. I'd like to get some background vocalist in after I'm done, and then that's it.
Cool. I think Sarah mentioned to me a bunch of other musical instruments that you've got or that you're into, or something to that effect.
Well, I have a keyboard here, which I use. I'm not a very good piano player, but I use it to practice singing. I have 4 guitars and a sitar.
Wow, sitar. Okay.
Hmm.
Do your birds like the sitar?
I don't think they hear it.
Oh, okay.
It's in a side room.
Oh,
But
okay.
I'd always been curious about sitar, and I saw one for a reasonable price on Craigslist. So I thought, well, why not? And I can't really play it properly, but it's such a beautiful sounding thing that even the most simple little melody just sounds gorgeous, really resonant. And I like it's nice to get a break from the guitar.
Yeah, they agree.
Yeah.
So I know that in the film we saw you playing guitar for the flock.
Yes.
Do your birds that you have now, do they like guitar?
Well, it's a cue for them. When I start playing guitar in the morning, that means it's time for them to go to bed with Judy. They understand the guitar as it's just like the routine. So when they hear the guitar, they like to spend the morning in bed with her, like for 15, 20 minutes. So when they hear the guitar, they know that that's up next, and that better happen pretty quick, or they're going to be angry about it.
So nice cue for them.
Yeah.
Do they like any particular type of music?
They don't have the same reaction that Mingus used to have. Like he
Oh, okay.
danced. I don't know why. Somebody owned him. He was a pet. But no, they could care less.
Yeah. Mine seem to like, they seem to like jazz. I hope Parker would like jazz.
Oh, I would
Um,
hope so too. Yeah. In
but
fact, I do a song by Charlie Parker called Ornithology.
okay. Um, Mine are into, they like the Bill Evans stuff.
Hmm.
Um, Vince Guaraldi, they like the Peanuts music. They
Oh,
like
nice.
that.
Good.
Um,
What kind are they?
they're all birds
Cherry
from the
heads?
flock.
Yeah.
They're all from the flock. Um, they all different tastes. One of them really likes rock and roll, but she gets a little too excited about it.
Yeah.
Um, so,
They don't seem
but,
to respond much to the music here. Well, they do. They don't like electric guitar.
oh,
They'll complain if I'm playing my electric. And
it's probably too loud for them.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes when I'm singing, if I'm working on things higher in my range and I have to sing
Mhm.
louder, it's like, please stop. You know?
So it becomes like what is the story about the Rocky Horror Picture Show? It becomes participatory.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
That type of stuff. Um, oh, somebody's Kanye likes punk music. That's not a THC. Um, let's see. Oh, and somebody they posted a link to to your music.
Yeah.
Um,
There's one song up right now.
oh,
They
okay,
they played it yesterday with Judy when
that's
she
right.
was on.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Let's see. What else do I have? Um, okay. So a lot of this stuff is going to your website. So I see I checked out your website. You've been adding some different stuff to it. You've added stuff about your upcoming stuff with the street songs
Hmm. Street
and
Song.
street
Actually,
song. That's
the
right.
book is called Street Song. The album's called Street Songs.
Okay.
And the lead song, the opening song on Street Songs is called Street Song. It
Get
really
all
was
that straight.
confusing my webmaster when I was trying to describe to her what I was wanted.
Okay. Let's see. So you've got a bunch of selection stuff on the site. I even see the old parrot diaries that
Yeah,
you've got on there. Are you
I
going
got
to
busy and I've neglected that, but I'm going to
oh,
continue it in the future.
okay. So I thought that was really cool. I did read through some of those. And so I recommend folks to go check those out as well. It's got some of the individual stories, the background, really interesting stuff. So you're going to add some more of those over time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um,
I was doing it once a week for a while, and I haven't done one in about 3 weeks or something because I got busy with some other stuff.
okay. So what other kind of stuff are you going to start putting up there in the future? You got a bunch of different stuff on
Well, I
there.
have a blog and I write about my obsessions there and some stuff that I'm working out now, ideas. But mostly my main work is getting the book and this music done because it's been in my head for 16 years and it really weighs me down sometimes and I want to get it over with, you know.
Yeah, so is it did trying to they started them off sort of separately, but then you're trying to bring them together, trying to keep them at this to meet at the same point. So it
Well,
makes it
it's
slow down.
strange because the music was just supposed to be this little supplement. It wasn't going to be a big deal, and it turned into a huge deal. And I didn't have to try to integrate them. It just one day I was working out an order of the songs, and I realized it told the story of the book. It's like I think of it as the soundtrack album to the book.
Cool.
They're not all songs that I used to do. I mean, like for instance, I never sang Strawberry Fields Forever, but I do that song because it's in the book and it's a pivotal moment in my musical education. So I
Cool.
worked up an arrangement for it and came out really well. We
Awesome.
even got cellos on.
Well, let's see if I had any other ones. Um, oh, we had some other great things that came up. So, something that's probably at least a few other people viewing here would be interested in. Something a lot of us have been doing since COVID started. I hear you've been making some sourdough.
Yeah, I'm into making sourdough. Well,
How often?
I was making bread before all of that, but
Okay.
I'd been reading about sourdough for several years, and it just sounded like a hassle. But with with COVID, when the lockdown was really heavy, I had a lot of time to do stuff, and I just got into it. Now it's my standard bread.
Well, it is in my house, as well. Which leads me to a couple of other follow-up questions. Have you perfected yours?
Yeah, I
Um,
have a method now, but I
okay.
have like 4 different starters. 2 that Sarah gave me, one that I made myself, and then I have a 4th one, which is just I'll mix the different starters together depending. So it's I call it X, and
Okay.
it's a mix of all the different starters that for some reason I couldn't return it to its own jar. So I had this one, and that's just a mixture.
Okay. And I've been asking other people this question that have been doing sourdough. Have you had any incidents where you forgot to save some for our next batch and had to start over?
I ruined one once
Okay.
when I put some eggs and milk into the batter before pulling it out, but that was just one time.
Just once? Okay.
Yeah,
We've had that happen a couple of times. So then there was a scramble to go and borrow some from somebody
yeah.
else.
No, well, I have a lot of starter. I mean, I keep a large amount of it in a jar, so I never use the whole thing when I start the next batch. I could make more easily.
Cool. Let's see. There were any other ones? Let's see. I think that was kind of it. I was going to check and see what other kinds of questions we've got in here. Somebody's asking, what birds do you have now?
2 cherry heads from the flock. Both. Well, the first bird, they're both 20 years old. They were both born the same year. We got Big Bird when she was just a few weeks out of the nest. She was flying down Telegraph Hill and hit a plexiglass windbreak and knocked herself out. And somebody thought she was dead and brought her to me to bury or something. And but she came to life. And I I couldn't return her to the flock. She didn't have any teaching, and she was too tame. By the time she was healed, she was too tame to release.
Hmm.
So she's one of them. And then Parker was a year old, and I was riding my bicycle down the street, and I saw somebody at Levi's Plaza, I saw somebody putting a box down on the ground over something. And I just knew it had to be one of the parrots who had fallen out of the sky.
Oh, wow.
And it's probably the rat poison. And I went over to see what it was, and I got him and brought him home, and he's too crippled. He can't fly. He used to do these sort of helicopter flights that were uncontrolled.
I've seen those. Yeah,
Yeah, he doesn't
I
even
have
try
that.
anymore. So we have those 2, and they're doing fine.
That's great. Great. 20 years. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So, oh, actually, this sort of spawns another question. Back in the day when you were with the flock regularly, this was before the days of the internets and social media and people contacting, each other easily about
Yeah, yeah.
found birds and stuff. Um, so, what did you do then? Do you just like I have no place to take these birds when you found the injured ones, or?
Yeah, at one point I had this little tiny studio apartment with 7 conures in it. People would bring me birds that they found on the ground, and I was helpless to do anything other than take care of them and hope for the best. I couldn't take them to vets. A few I did every now and then because just things came together in the right way.
Mhm.
But I would just take care of them as best as I could, and if they survived, they fine. If they didn't, I buried them. But there wasn't any support structure.
Right. That's what I was wondering about
Yeah,
because it's like, and this was probably not unique. This probably happened, a lot. Not a lot of rescue organizations early on, or easy ways to contact them.
yeah, yeah.
So
I did take a bird to a vet once who took pity on me and didn't charge me. But it was, I don't remember why. It was kind of a desperate situation, a bird I really wanted to save, and I'd figure out how to pay for it later, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I guess something else I think I missed earlier. Um, what kind of impacts did has like visitors and tourism had on the flock over the years? I imagine when people see the film, they're like, "Oh, great! These are cute little birds. I wonder I should bring one, try to catch one and bring it home."
I had a huge problem back, I think it was 2007, where this guy called me and said, "Oh, I'd like to do what you did. What do you think of that?" And I said, "Don't." He wanted to go down to the park where they roost and feed them there. And I said, "No, don't do it. It'd be a big mistake." Because I was always really, really careful about them getting used to strangers.
Mhm.
And, but he went ahead and did it anyway. And then other people were coming by and they said, "Oh, that looks cool. I'll do it too." And before long, there was like a group of 20 people bringing sacks of sunflower seeds down to the park, and the birds were getting really tame. And then some of them started disappearing. And I went berserk, you know. The idea of them losing their freedom is the worst thing to me. And if the result of the book and the film was that these birds were going to start losing their freedom, it was just like total failure, because that was the opposite of what I was trying to get out there. So I did something that I'd never done before. I went to the city and tried to get a law passed to ban the feedings. And then the New York Times got involved with it, and the feeders were calling me a hypocrite. And it was all this really intense stuff.
Mhm.
And you can get a law passed, but to try to get the police to enforce it, like
Right.
they got enough to do, and they're not going to go down and arrest bird feeders. So
Right.
I actually did go to the local police station and had to address the lineup and explain to them why I was doing this. But I was smart enough not to make a big deal out of it. They would have just dismissed me. But it was kind of a funny situation. They were all, a parade roast, that kind of thing, and I'm
Right.
telling them about the bird feeders and what criminals they were. So it worked out in the end. It stopped.
Well, that's good. If you think about like some of the things that you've heard probably in recent years, um, like over tourism and people trying to take selfies with different
Well, I don't know about
street.
that happening now, but there was a period where it was happening a lot, and it was really bugging me, because to me, what's beautiful about them is their wildness,
Mhm.
and people were sort of turning them into a tourist attraction, which I didn't like so much. I think you should, admire them like you would any other bird.
Yeah, and I know
That was one of the
something.
points I was making in the film when the city called me in to, "What do we do after you're gone?" I said, "Nothing. There's nothing to be done. They're just wild birds. They're doing fine."
Yeah, and something Judy mentioned as well. Even when trying to film them, they don't like to stay put,
No,
so
they're restless.
they take off.
Yeah.
Um, but somebody's asking is do they ever come? They know you and ever come up seeking you out? The
No,
birds.
because any of the birds that I would have known have long since passed away. Um, no,
You don't have a stamp on your forehead.
no, no, no. Well, I see them. Like, it's what's interesting to me is I'm really attuned to the flock still. They can be, a long, long way away, but I'll hear them every time because they scream when they fly,
Yeah,
and I'll hear them. It's just like, oh, there's the parrots.
yeah. I think several of us get that as well.
Yeah.
At this point, I can be out somewhere and I'll hear it very faintly, even though those I'm with don't hear it. And it's like, what are you
You
talking about? I mean, I
you were
hear them. They're
asking
there.
you were asking about misconceptions. One I get a lot is that they fly as far south as Sunnyvale. People don't imagine that there could be another flock, but I mean, there are several flocks in the Bay Area.
That's right. There is a flock down there. I've got friends in
Palo Alto has one.
yeah, in Campbell. And so the birds frequently come by there. There's actually some Amazons as well
Yeah, yeah,
that they see regularly. So there's flocks of wild parrots,
all across the United States. There's one in New York City. There's two in New York City, actually.
Oh wow, I hadn't heard about those.
Yeah, there's monk parakeets, and there's also some mite hoods. in
Cool.
Queens.
Well, let's see. Let's see if does anybody else have any questions you want to submit. Go ahead and do that because we're the countdown has begun.
Yeah, Julie, there is a question that you missed from way early on about Mingus. The
Oh,
question goes, here it is. This person went down to the Oasis Sanctuary in Arizona a few years ago and was wondering how Mingus got there. She goes on to say that he was quite frail, but he was being taken care of well at the Oasis Infirmary. So, if we could perhaps say something there.
Mingus died a few years ago, but he lived a long time, but he's no longer with us.
did I miss any other ones? Oh, and somebody asked about the street song. Um, so is this they want to know how to be able to access it when you're finished with it. I'm assuming
Well,
this means you go to the publisher.
I hope to find a publisher and it will come out as a hardback book and then a paperback. That's the traditional route, and that's what
Yep.
I'd like. I put so much work into it. I don't really want to release it as a PDF online or anything like that.
Yeah,
Or
people do that a
self-publish it.
lot.
I don't even want to self-publish it. I would like a real publisher, but I've worked really hard on it. It's not, writing isn't something new to me. I've been writing since I was a teenager. Actually, I started about the second grade, but I'm doing my final edit now and reading it. I'm not making all that many corrections. I feel like, okay, it's going along. I did a good job on it. I worked really hard, it's just like I had stomach problems at one point because I was so stressed out over the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess at some point you I learned this in art class many years ago. Um, when the instructor said you sometimes just have to leave it alone
Yeah.
because otherwise you're making it overly precious.
Yeah. Well, I did actually, when I say 16 years, there was a period that I left it alone for about 2 years when I was working on the music in the beginning. And it was really helpful it never went away entirely, but it was helpful not to be working on it for a while.
Cool. Let's see. Um, there's a story you alluded to earlier, and that's not Street Song.
Oh,
How would they
yes,
get access to that? Is that going to
I
be on
will
your website?
probably end up putting it on my website.
Okay.
It's the story of the deep background of why I was feeding the parrots. It's remarkable. It's really amazing. I just started writing it 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay.
It's not going to be a really long story, but I know a lot of people think coincidence is simply random, weird stuff that happens to sound good, but there was some really deep coincidences that I discovered, and they're really solidly linked. And it's the reason that I was feeding the birds. It was, I said, I felt all along inside me that I was supposed to be doing this. It wasn't, I didn't know why. And I know why. I mean, there's my life up to the point that I fed the parrots. And then there's my life afterward. And it's really a pivotal thing, completely pivotal. Not just like having a vocation, which I do have now and I didn't before, but also a whole set of ideas came into play that I learned from, interacting with the parrots. I've always been obsessed with consciousness and what is it, mind. And when you're dealing with these creatures that have character, personalities, and a lot of people will tell you that, oh, they're just chemical robots firing off neurons, but it's not like that. And they're just like us in a lot of ways. They don't have the same intellectual capacity. Lucky for them, they have sense of humor. They're curious, they're angry, they're jealous, all of this stuff. It's universal characteristics, not biological per se. And there's a chapter in Wild Parrots called Consciousness Explained, which I would hasten to add is an ironic title. But it's what I learned from the parrots and the experience. So that was a very pivotal thing for me, and it's like it changed my life, and I think there was a reason for me to be doing it. And I'm going to be telling that story soon. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I know that people would accuse us of anthropomorphizing the birds by trying to put attribute things like personalities and stuff, but that's something that I have found that people a misconception that I get.
Well, I have a
say to
big
me,
thing about that in Consciousness Explained, that chapter, because I just think it's a horrible concept in the first place. I mean, the features of consciousness are universal. They're not specific to us. It's like we are these intelligent beings and everybody else is just a bunch of numbskulls, It's not true. It's not like that.
Yeah, they don't think they're surprised that birds have different personalities. I
Yeah,
have five
yeah,
birds and five very different personalities that they had when they
yeah,
arrived.
yeah, yeah. And you can recognize them, I mean, there's this presence that each bird has.
Mhm. Some of them give you the stink eye, and some of them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of them are completely uninterested in anything you're doing, while others
yes.
are quite observant.
Yeah, five birds, five different personalities, different preferences,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
in everything. So yeah, it's very different. People are really surprised by that.
yeah.
Um,
I see that
they
all the
have that.
time too. You go, wow, wow. It's just like you can, it's like they're a human being.
Right. Well, when we see those
Something like that.
struggles with in the book with the wild parrots, it's like you're trying to figure out what's with this bird, what's with
Yes,
this one,
yeah,
why won't he respond to this? Why does
yeah,
this one
yeah.
respond to that? Yeah.
That's a lot of what Street Song is about too.
Okay. Eagerly anticipated.
Good.
Somebody wants to know, Cynthia wants to know, does Mark join Judy in swimming in the bay? I actually thought of that yesterday.
I
Um,
used to. I quit.
Too cold?
No, I just had a problem with the locker room environment.
Mm,
I got sick of certain behaviors and talk. So I
understandable.
quit. Yeah. It was kind of piggish behavior that I didn't like.
Yeah. Probably some stereotypical stuff. We would.
Yes, very much so. It was locker room talk, and I couldn't stand it.
Ugh. All right. Okay, folks, we got like six minutes left. Um, let's see. Um, so I will go ahead and say we've got so to find additional information. So you have your website.
Yeah.
That,
Markbittner.net.
mm-hmm. Where else can people find information about what you're up to on a
Well, I
regular
have a
basis?
Facebook page. Surprise. And well, read my book. I people often don't realize that there is a book also called The Wild Parrots of Telegraph Hill. It's not a novelization of the film.
Right.
They're completely different projects, and there's a lot of stuff in there that surprises people when they find it. Some people like the book better than the film. But I thought, if you're really curious about this flock or parrots in general, I think it's really useful.
Yeah. And let's see, what else do we have here? Um, and let's see. Oh, my screen is locking up a little bit here. Um,
Yeah, Judy, so in the chat, there's mention by one of our volunteers that, obviously Mickaboo is taking in a great number of these Telegraph Hill conures as they have their medical needs and slam into buildings and that on their early flights. People should feel free to help us, help the birds. The donation link is actually behind you, Judy, mickaboo.org/donate. And In fact, when we talk about consciousness and the birds and how unique they are as a whole, our 2 p.m. presentation, just 5 minutes from now, is a presentation by two of our wonderful volunteers who are bridging that gap, communicating between species, their birds that they have as companion animals, and themselves, using iPads as a way to help bridge the conversation there. So, let's see. There's one more question in chat, and Julie, if you can see that, then that might be the last question we take to give ourselves a couple-minute break before the next one.
Let's see. Okay, it's coming. It's back up. Um, from Cynthia from Sonoma. I seem to remember you didn't think your work with the parrots was important. Do you feel differently now?
Well, it has value. To call it important would seem kind of egotistical, but I think it had value. Yeah, I did learn an awful lot, and it inspired a lot of thoughts, and I think I got a unique look at something. Yeah, I mean, I was often told, I was getting to see things that scientists don't get to see because they don't interact with the birds. And so, I mean, I once had a parrot expert. I read a parrot expert say that if your parrot is biting you, you're doing something wrong because parrots don't usually bite. And that was just like a joke. I wrote him and I said, oh, they bite each other all the time. And he got very angry with me. And he said, I want names, dates, but it's transparent. They get into fights all the time. They bloody each other's eyes. So I saw a lot of different stuff that scientists don't see or they don't accept because it doesn't fall into some pattern that they expect.
Yeah.
So it has value. It had value, but I won't call it important.
I'll add with the biting. Yes,
Yeah.
they use it on each other all the time.
Yeah.
I mentioned to some people before that it's like, well, the thing is, they do it to each other, and they have feathers, so the beak just kind of rolls off, so it doesn't hurt them like it does us. So they basically treat us the same way they would treat another bird.
Yeah. Yeah. They get angry.
Oh yeah. Cool. Looks like we've got 2 minutes, so I'll try to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Mark, for
Sure.
joining us today.
I haven't done this in a while.
Thank you again.